it can store or record.
Okay. Yeah, I think if you record it, then you maybe only need to keep it for 2 weeks, so everybody who has missed it can see it. Do you see what I mean? So it doesn't need to tie up your storage for a long period of time.
Yeah,
but I think it would be better if it was locally recorded. I've just switched on record now, so I'll record from now onwards this session, and that'll be on a cloud recording, and I will share that cloud recording with you. But I'm going to have to delete that quite soon because, as you can imagine, doing 4 sessions to 4 universities, doing these sessions to 4 universities, I use up my, as I say, I've already got it, it's already full from what I did yesterday. Okay. So it gets full very quickly.
Dr. Pam, it is possible if you have limited time of keeping the video recorded. So I think if you can download, if you store the video and then you download.
I can't do that. I can't do that, Dr. Santi, because it's using up all my computer storage as well. So I really can't do that because it just uses up, it's like, it's 1 or 2 gigabytes each seminar is 1 or 2 gigabytes. It's just not possible for me to keep that amount of
then
stuff.
I will discuss with Noon about this point.
Yeah.
And
okay.
we can,
I mean, I think in the end it's up to the university. If you want to make it available to people who have missed the session or who want to watch it again, I think that is that is up to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good that we can keep the video recording.
Okay. And as I say, once you've used it, you may only need to keep it for 2 weeks and then throw it away. And I won't know that. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I never host this kind of Zoom meeting. I only participate, so I don't know this problem. Okay. I will discuss with Jan Kampan, who will also responsible for this hosting of the meeting. And so I think we would like to hear the feedback from the participant about your presentation today, I think.
Yep, that's fine. I haven't finished, by the way. I'm not at the end of the seminar. So yes, questions, if you want to put them in the chat or comments, please do so.
เป็นไงเป็นอาจารย์นีนบ่เนาะอันถ้าอาจารย์ใดอยากถามเพิ่นก็ถามเลยเนาะอันนี้ก็บ่ได้อันนั้นเบิ่งอันนี้เพิ่งบ่อาจารย์ท่านใดมีหยังถามเพิ่นตื่นก็ถามได้เด้อบ่อนันเดชมีหยังถามเพิ่นบ่
Let me ask one question. Hello, Dr. Pam.
Hi there. Hello. Yep. Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
With this activity, this activity, this year of student is the most suitable for them to use this activity.
Yeah, I guess final year students, because they're the ones that will be going into jobs, but I would not discount maybe starting some of this with maybe 2nd or 3rd year students, maybe to start thinking about it. So I think it depends on what groups you have, and what you may want to think about after you've kind of completed the training. You may want to be introducing some of the ideas of the training a bit earlier on in the course, because when we get on things like CVs, quite an important aspect of doing a good CV is making the most of what you have to offer, And in some cases, students might suddenly realize, well, actually, if I want to get that sort of job, I need to really improve my Chinese, or really improve my English, or really develop some customer-facing skills. And they may need some time to develop those, to actually improve their language skills. So it's never, I say it's never too early. when students get past the midway point of their course, they should be starting to think forward about what they want to do afterwards, and starting to explore options. So I guess that's a long answer, but I guess the short answer is final year students. But I don't think there's any harm at all in getting students to start thinking about looking for a job and what's going to make them attractive to an employer much earlier on. Yeah, because then they've got time, you know, if they choose to get, you know, a summer job, or if they choose to do some language training, you know, even some online language training. You know, I've known people who have learnt, you know, English just using online apps, free online apps, and they've done it very, very well. You know, and that, you know, that can help build confidence with conversation. You know, so that's possible to do for free if you put the time in. Still working on my Lao.
Thank you, Dr. Pam.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for the question. Any other questions or comments? Yes? Do you want to unmute yourself? Do you want to, if you want to ask a question, do you want to unmute yourself? Or put it in the chat.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes, sorry.
Yes. Okay. Hello, I am Ladam Chan from the Faculty of Letters.
Pleased to meet you.
Yes, my question is, I wonder how can we introduce our lesson, I mean our training contents with our students, since we have very packed hours teaching our students. And I would like to share my experience doing soft skill training at the moment with the 4th and the 3rd year students within the noon. So actually, I have done 3 workshops already on soft skill training, and we are planning to do it again in April, May, and then June for the final ones. What I have done, I just, you know, organize it on Saturday and on Wednesday afternoon. So I wonder what we have trained with you. I wonder how can we fit in our schedule with our students, I mean the 4th year and the 3rd year students. So I'm a bit concerned about organizing the lesson learned from your training to our students.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, it's always a problem when you've got to cover a syllabus and prepare the students for the exam. Well, I don't have the control over the syllabus, obviously. So I guess it's a professional judgment as to whether you can take some time from the classes, or whether you offer it to the students as an optional extra outside class time. Yeah,
it must be outside class time, and I think we need to talk with our boss.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
maybe something. Yes, yeah. Maybe something to bring up with your faculty head alongside the champion role. Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. How's the soft skill training going?
Actually, yeah, it's very good, but we have one problem with, you know, since we tend to get participants from different faculties, some of them missed some of the lecture, you know, some of the training, especially on Saturday. I guess Wednesday afternoon will be a good time for our students.
That's interesting, because that's it. Soft skills, helping lecturers to develop soft skills in students, is also on my my list of tasks to do, and I was going to come to that later in the year. So I need to find out more about the training that you're doing at the minute. Is it under SSHEP? Do you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Right. Any other questions, points, comments?
อาจารย์ท่านอื่นมีอย่างถามเติมว่ามีอย่างเติมมีอย่างแลกเปลี่ยนกันเติมมาเป็นนี่เป็นการแลกเปลี่ยนสุดเนาะนี่เป็นเรื่องอิดเอาสนทนากันหลักโดยหลักคือเรารู้จักกันเข้าใจกันประมาณนั้นแล้วก็เฮาสิถึงได้เห็นเฮาเรียกเฮานี่เจ้า
Okay, I'll take the silence to mean that there isn't.
Probably
Okay.
no more questions.
Okay, fine. I'll carry on then. So the next sort of part of the session, I wanted to talk about activity-based learning, student-centered learning, and why I think it's important to do some of this when you're trying to develop employability skills in your students. And I suppose my main argument is that the students won't have to pass an exam in employability. They won't have to pass a test. They won't have to do a project on it. What they have to do is they actually have to get a job. Yeah. And then throughout their career, they then have to go on and get more jobs. So they need to actually have the practical skills. They need to be able to do it themselves, not tell you how to write an excellent CV. They need to actually write an excellent CV. So they need to actually do those skills. They need to demonstrate those skills. So they actually need to develop literally employability skills. They actually need to do the things that we're going to cover themselves. And the other thing is they need to build their confidence that they can do these things, that they can handle a job interview, that they can write a good CV, that they can research and find jobs. So they need to build their confidence about that. And I think the university is an important role to give them a safe space where they can make mistakes, they can do a rubbish interview, they can do a very poor interview and not be penalised for it. Because one thing's for sure, once they get out into the world of employment and the world of jobs, they will be penalised for doing a bad interview. So the university provides them with a safe space where they can experiment and they can learn those skills and they can make mistakes. And that will help build their confidence. So when they get out into the real world, as it were, they feel better prepared for doing it. So anything that we can do to simulate the experiences they're going to get out there is going to be a benefit to them. So I'm going to talk now a bit about student-centered learning, activity-based learning. You can call it what you like. I'm just talking about it. Well, I'll do the PowerPoint anyway, and we can sort of come back and have a chat about it. So I'll just share the screen and find the right. Sorry. I wish things wouldn't. Here we go. Okay, so activity-based learning, also known as task or problem-based learning, you might use different terms for it, or student-centered learning, learning by doing. The essential things about this type of learning is that the student is actively engaged in the activity rather than being passive recipients of information. They're actively engaged. And I suppose the key characteristic that you'd look for is that students are actually at the center of the learning process. So they're leading the learning process themselves rather than the lecturer. And this kind of brings us on to quite an important point about doing activity-based learning, task-based learning, student-centered learning, whatever you want to call it. It's that the lecturer has to take a step back, and that can be quite difficult, both from the perspective of the student, because they're not used to taking responsibility for their own learning, but also from the point of view of the lecturer that can see they're making lots of mistakes and wants to go in and help them and to get it right. And that's one thing that you have to stop yourself doing if you're going to do this successfully. You have to let them make the mistakes to a certain extent. You can obviously guide, but because students always look to you as a centre of authority, that you know everything and you can give them the answer and it's much easier to ask you, then they always tend to refer to you. So that's one thing that you just need to be careful of when you're doing activity-based learning. And obviously it comes with practice, but it's kind of just about taking yourself away from the students' visibility and letting them work it out for themselves, and maybe giving a little bit of guidance, a little bit of help quietly to those that particularly need it, but not allowing the students to come back to you for all the answers, or come back to you because they're not confident about what they're doing, or come back to you for your evaluation or to tell them how well they're doing. So it's about sort of learning to sort of take yourself to the background. So that might be as simple as taking yourself to the back of the class. With some classes, I've had to go out into the corridor, to let them get on with it, to sort of start on that. So this is sort of some of the stuff in terms of just sort of switching the focus from the lecturer at the front, on the board, on the PowerPoint, to the actual students working themselves and to learning to lead their own learning. And if students aren't used to doing it, these are the sorts of issues that you just need to manage when you're sort of starting off with it. So just some examples of activity-based learning. I'm sure that you can come up with other ones as well. Sorry, I've just got other people I've just got to admit, late joiners. Okay. Right, so just some examples of activity-based learning. I'm sure that you can think of plenty of other ones as well. For some reason it won't let me. Here we go. So working in small groups within a class, so working as part of a pair or working as part of a small group on a task. For some reason, groups of 3 and 5 work better than groups of 4. Don't ask me why. Odd numbers seem to work better, but pairs work quite well as well. Researching something either individually or in a group, and they should be quite used to that. If they're doing a degree, they should be used to sort of finding out about things. But maybe group activities where they each have different roles and then they have to feed back to the others. Because one of the things with task-based learning is to think about what sort of skills they're developing. Obviously, if they're researching something, they're doing something with research skills. But maybe if they've also got to feed back to the group, they're doing communication as well. And if they've got to feed it back to the group, they've got to understand it themselves, and they've got to think about how they're going to feed it back. So brainstorming, very, very free thinking, where nothing is wrong, and it's about trying to stimulate thought process to go outside the box, to be unconventional, to maybe see connections that are not obvious. So brainstorming can be quite a useful activity, just sort of like a brain dump, and not criticizing any ideas, but getting them just down, getting them organized afterwards. That can be very useful kind of exercise. Experimenting, obviously, building something, or trying to explore, does this work better than that? So exploring things, obviously common in science, but there's no reason why it needs to be limited to that. Creativity can be quite a good motivator for a number of different students, and we've got the technology. It could be a paper product, it could be a poster, or it could be an electronic product. They could be doing a video, they could be doing a recording, they could be interviewing employers, for example, to get employers' perspectives. They could be producing a product. Preparing and giving a presentation can be quite a powerful confidence builder. They will hate doing it the first time they do it, most of them, but actually doing the research for it, and then actually trying to organise their thoughts and give a coherent presentation, which can be evaluated by their peers, by their classmates, and by the lecturer, can be quite a powerful way of getting students engaged in subjects. Doing a quiz or a poll, they like those. And obviously you can make them as challenging or as easy as possible. Sorry, somebody else has come into the waiting room, so I just need to get them in. Right. Debating and discussing in groups and class. You might need to have some rules for doing that, for controlling so that people don't get too energetic about it, but not too quiet either. That there's a controlled and there's a rational route to the arguments. Role play can be particularly important with employability skills. Particularly, role play can be very useful in the sense it takes the student out of their perspective and puts them in somebody else's perspective. Quite difficult. Some people find this very difficult to do in the first instance, and they hate doing role play. But once they kind of get used to it, and if you introduce it gently, role play, you wouldn't use it an awful lot. But for example, in an interview situation where you've got somebody playing the employer and somebody playing the employee, that can feel very different when you're sort of sitting on the other side of the table, as it were, from the person being interviewed. Trying to do the interviewing, and you realise how difficult it can be. Micro teaching, where you get them to actually cover, a little bit of a topic and sort of teach it to the rest of the class. So the example I've suggested in the handbook is that you ask each student to research an employer that they think they might like to work for, and then to give a short presentation to the class about that employer. And if you think about the sorts of skills that involves, that's really quite a lot, because they're using their research skills, they could be using analysis skills. They've got to identify the important facts, and then they've got to decide how they're going to communicate those effectively. And also, if they, at the end, you ask them to think, well, would you want to work for this employer now or not? And if not, what changed your mind? So it helps them to sort of just a little bit of step back, a bit of self-evaluation, a bit of self-reflection. So not only does that help the student that's actually done the research, but it also helps the rest of the students in the class, because they now know more about that employer than they did before. So that could be one idea for doing something like that. Okay. I've got a bit of a quiz on activity-based learning. I don't know if you've used this before. It's one of these Zoom polls which you can answer on. So I was going to suggest that we have a go with a poll. Sorry, it's telling me my internet connection is unstable, so I hope you can still hear me. So, right, just admitting people. So the sorts of things that we're going to do in this poll, because you're all separate, you can all decide on your answer. I think I've made it anonymous, but I'm not planning to attribute any answers to anybody. So please answer it as if it was anonymous, because you won't get quoted anywhere, even if it's not anonymous. But I was going to ask you to work with groups to do some sort of activity-based learning with your students. If you do it, and if there are positives and negatives, and also teacher-centered learning. So in other words, the learning which is centered around the lecturer. What are the positives? What are the negatives? And your attitudes towards activity-based learning. So we're going to, instead of doing these as a discussion, we're going to do these as a poll. So let me just stop sharing and see if we can have a go at the poll. Well, first of all, I'll just halt there and give you an opportunity to make any comments or ask any questions that you want to do. Before I go into the poll. Okay, I can't see everybody on the screen, but nobody appears to be either shouting at me or typing anything into the comments section here, the chat section. Somebody is. Yes, please.
I have been teaching a master degree program. So my students are those who have been in employment already. So this activity may be a little bit less relevant to my current teaching. I used to teach bachelor degree students. Anyway, I can, it is a good lesson. I can apply it to my future class, or I can adapt it to my master degree students. Like that.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I suppose one thing to maybe that might be worth thinking about is to ask your master students if they would welcome any revision or you know, possible enhancement, yeah, and very selectively just do a little bit, you know, because maybe although they've had jobs and maybe they've written CVs, they might welcome a bit of a what's the word, a revision session, or a, you know, a reflection session. I don't know. I mean, it's worth asking them if they would value that, maybe. And obviously you assume they've got a bit more prior knowledge, so you can start at a higher level. So yeah, no, it's a good point. Good point.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pam.
Pardon?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you for the question. I'll give just a minute or just a few seconds. Yeah, okay. There were two things that I was meant to cover in the presentation that I forgot to cover. So there you are. We all do it, don't we? Okay, so two kind of, if you're sort of relatively new to using activity-based learning or student-centered learning, or even if you're not, it's just worth thinking about two sort of like, we talked about timing before. Yeah, timing can be quite crucial for student activity-based learning, because if you give the students too long a time to do it, then they kind of get bored and they go off task and they don't focus and they start chatting about what's on tomorrow night and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So if you don't give them enough time, they try to get through it really, really quickly, and they don't do it properly. And obviously there's no right or wrong answer on terms of time. It's kind of like a judgment call. But I think it's important to give students a time scale that you think is reasonable for them to do whatever the task is. So they've got a deadline to work towards. So that's one thing about timing is quite crucial. So think quite carefully, you know, if you're going to give them an exercise to think about, you know, what's good about this CV, what's bad about that CV, you know, try and think about realistically how long it will take them to read through the CVs, to evaluate them, to discuss, to agree, and try and just make your best call to see, you know, to give them 20 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is. Yeah. And obviously you can adjust it with future classes if it's been too long or it's been too short. But timing can either make or break an activity-based learning session. The other thing I would say about activity-based learning is that it's really important to give the students really, really clear instructions, because the first thing they will do is they will disagree about what they've got to do, in my experience. They will debate. So tell them what you want them to do and write it on the board or have a PowerPoint slide with it on, so that they can keep on referring back to it. When they start discussing, they say, oh, no, she didn't say that, she said this. Because then they get a bit sidetracked and they spend all their time debating about what they're supposed to be doing, and they end up not doing the right thing. So make it really, really clear, both verbally and in writing, so that there's no question, they can refer back to it and they can understand what they've got to do. Obviously, whatever task you give them needs to be relevant and it needs to be meaningful. It needs to, they must be able to see the point of doing it at that particular point in the class. And what you really want them to do is, you don't want them to be doing something which they already know about. You want them to be doing something which actually is pushing their skill development, their knowledge development a bit further. So it's challenging for them. It's not just sort of putting into practice what you've already told them to do. Okay, and we've already talked about in quite some detail about this idea about, you know, once they're started on the activity, make an active decision to step back from the class, to step away from the class. leave them for a few minutes on their own to start to find their way through the task and start working on it. And then if need be, you can go around and gently see how each group is doing and steer them back on task or help them to solve problems if you need to. And I suppose the thing to remember is that activity-based learning, it can feel very strange because you're used to being the expert and providing the information. So it can feel very strange from that point of view. And the students can get quite noisy, and typically, obviously, you want a class to be quiet and to be concentrating into working hard and things like that. It can get noisy, it can get, lively. So you need to think if you're disturbing other classes, perhaps doing, exams or, more formal lectures around you. So you just need to keep on top of that and just sort of remind them that they need to not disturb others. And at the end of the task, and stick to time. If you say 10 minutes, give them 10 minutes. If you say 20 minutes, give them 20 minutes. So they know, they learn the discipline, the fact that they have got a set period of time. And obviously it's up to you, but I mean, I would be quite strict with it because if you think it's a reasonable amount of time, it probably is a reasonable amount of time. And otherwise they just, as I say, they tend to muck around and not get on with it if they think they're just going to get an extension of time because they haven't finished. But then you've got to get the class back again. You've got to get the class attention back on you again. And so you need to have a way of making sure that happens, of calling them to attention and making sure that they're clear that they've switched the activity back again. Okay, so I'm now going to launch the poll. So basically, each of you can vote for what you think is your option. I said there's no right or wrong answers. It's just opinions about how you feel about lecture-based learning, student-centered learning, how much you use it. So it's quite useful for me because it gives me a chance to understand kind of where you're coming from on this. So I'm launching the poll. So hopefully you can see the poll now and you'll get the opportunity to vote. And as you vote, it's quite exciting. I can sit here and I can see the votes coming in. So I can see what percentage votes forever. So can you all see that? You might need to do something like launch the poll. Can you see it, Dr. Santi?
Yes, I can see.
Yeah, good, great.
So I'm asking the participant to answer and submit answer.
Great, I can see all the responses coming in. So 4 out of 18 people have voted on the first question. So we've got a bit to come. quite interesting. As more people vote, I can see the percentages change on the different responses. So I've had 44% of people voting, so that's 8 out of 18. So if you haven't voted, now's your chance.
Dr. Pam,
Yes.
how many percent do you use teacher centers to your classes?
Depends on the class. It depends on the class very much. If I was teaching in, I mean, obviously today, it's been very lecturer led, hasn't it? I've done most of the talking and you've had to do most of the listening. Yeah, in this situation. And ideally, if I was in a class with students, I would possibly do half and half, depending on the topic. If you're doing I'm a biologist, environmental scientist. Yeah, if you're doing something complicated like respiration, it's quite difficult to do that through student-centered learning. You can do it, but you have to do the theory first, and then you could do an activity whereby they all play a part in the cell transition, yeah, the chemicals and things like that. You can organize it like that, but there's some pretty hard theory to get through first. So it just depends. It depends. I would very rarely, I don't like doing a session where it's just me talking. As I say, I would normally have done an activity with you if you'd been together in a group, yeah, and had some discussions, because you can do Q&A, but it's not quite the same as actually getting engaged. So but I think it just depends on the students, the situation, the subject that you're trying to cover. So, but good question, thank you for it. Right, how are we doing on the voting? Right, 14 out of 17 have voted, so we need another 3 people to vote, please, if you are able. And then we'll have a look at the answers. Three more people going. Oh, we've got somebody else in the waiting room. Wow, they've come for the last minutes, haven't they? I'll just give, right, I think this is probably your last chance because we spent over 6 minutes on this now. So 14 out of 18 people have voted. So I'll just give you another minute. If you can get your votes in for those 4 people who haven't voted yet, if you can manage that. Yes, I will show you the result of the vote when everybody's voted. Yes, I can do that. Sorry, that's a question that's come up in the chat, so that's fine. Yeah, that can be done. I just need everybody to vote. So we have 4 people who are shy, or they haven't worked out how you can vote. Possibly. I know it's the first time you do it, it throws you a little bit, but I'm hoping to use 1 or 2 polls in each of the seminars, so it's just worth getting familiar with it. So okay, I think I've given those 4 people who haven't voted, I've given them the minute that I promised them. So let's end the polling now. And I can share the results. Yeah, there we go. I think I lose the results once I share them, so I'll just quickly talk you through them before I share them with you. So it looks like activity-based learning is used quite a lot in NUOL, which is great. And most people feel that they already use it effectively, which again is great. So that's fantastic. Some negative student-based learning. lots of positives to student-based learning, benefits to didactic learning, learner-centered learning, lecturer-centered learning, which I agree with, and yeah, some negatives as well. So anyway, I'll show the results with you. Okay, can you see the results now? Yeah, great. Okay. I can get to see this, so I could have shared them with you, and I thought was a bit worried it was going to sort of shut it down for me. Zoom does some strange things, you know, in terms of how the whole thing works. I'm still sort of trying to get sort of competent with it, but okay. So I don't know if those were surprising results, or whether you. So as I say, I think generally speaking, people are positively disposed and use activity-based learning anyway, at least sometimes with their students, which is great. I know that that's probably what we're actively encouraged to do. And if you already use it effectively, well, that's fantastic, because you know, you can adapt any suggestions that I make. You can make your own suggestions if you're confident with using it, because I think a lot of the time it's about confidence for people to do it. So I'll be making some suggestions, and you can have a look at those and see what you think of them. Negatives of student-centered based learning. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people thought that there were some negatives, which I agree with. I mean, it takes more time for a start to get through material. So some negatives, but some people thought there were no negatives. Lots of positives as well. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I agree with all of that. There are benefits to didactic teaching. You can teach. It's very much more efficient. You can do things much more quickly. It's much quicker to tell somebody something than to get them to work it out for themselves. So that's fair enough. And sometimes you just have to do it with complex topics. But something like employability, where students have actually got to go and do it themselves, does lend itself quite well to sort of activity-based learning as well. Okay. I can ask you questions about the results of the poll, but I won't be able to get the answers. So I'll just close that down. You've had a chance to have a look at that. What I wanted to do to finish off was to go through the tasks to be done before next time. So screen sharing thing, because you can only share one screen at once. Okay, so if you look at the end of the draft handbook extract, the tasks. So I'm asking you to do these before the next seminar. One is simply watching a TED talk, watching a video on YouTube, and it's not very long. I don't think it's 10 minutes long. And to think about some questions. It's about a science teacher who has converted completely to student-centered activities, which you might think is a bit too extreme, but he goes then also into, you know, some of the principles behind it. It's quite entertaining. So it's quite an interesting one to watch. American guy. The next activity, the next task, is to read a paper which has been prepared by some engineering lecturers in a university in India, where they're actually trying to look at using student-centered activities with their undergraduates, and also looked at the results from the students themselves. So I'm just going to stop sharing and pull that paper up so I can just show you what the paper looks like. So you've got the link there, that will take you straight to it. Let me just see if I can find the paper so you know what you're looking for. Here we go. Okay, so activity-based learning and experience. I've now lost my screen. Sorry. There we go. So that's the paper that you're looking for. I don't dare move on it now because I'm going to lose it again. But if you scroll down, you'll see that, oh, yeah, that they've looked at different ways of introducing it, more activity-based learning, and it just might give you some ideas. And it's quite helpful that they've asked, you know, they've got feedback from the students, yeah, and they've looked at the academic performance of the students before and after, or using different sorts of methods. And it's only sort of exercise. They've done a sort of snakes and ladders thing, and they've made it a bit competitive as well. So it's quite an interesting short paper. I think it might be, I don't know, 5 or 6 pages maximum, but about it being used within an undergraduate setting. So I thought that would be an interesting one for you to look at as we're going through. So just going back again to the tasks. So there are some questions down there. Questions down there about the, you know, whether they were successful or not, you know, just give you a sort of bit of evaluation. And, you know, would you use some of these activities for your own classes? Most of you do use activity-based learning. So I think it would be useful exercise to think about an activity, just one activity-based learning thing that you do. And if you don't already do this, which you might already do, but if you don't do it, to actually try to analyse what skills the students are actually practicing while they're doing the exercise. Because I did that sort of analysis for the one about researching an employer, and there's actually quite a lot of different skills involved in that, because you really should be trying to balance the different sorts of skills that they're getting from it. If you don't do it, then, you know, this is an exercise here to think about introducing one that you do, and to planning out properly what topic would it be, what would the activity be, how are you going to tell them what to do, what materials, what resources do you need, how long will it take, and blah, 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 assessing the effectiveness, all that sort of thing. So if you don't do activity-based learning, then what you can do is you can go through E and then use the results to answer question D. Okay, and the last task is about the champion role, yeah, about how you're going to fulfill the champion role in your faculty. And so I'm asking you, if you haven't already, you know, have a meeting with your faculty head, discuss how you're going to do the champion role, and ideally send me and Dr. Santi an email just telling us briefly what you're going to be doing in the champion role. That would be useful to know. Okay, I'm just going to stop there. So those are your tasks for next time. What I will be doing is I will share the PowerPoints that I've used today. I'll share the pro forma lecture plan if you want to use that, entirely up to you. And I will also be sharing the section of the handbook for module 1, which is CVs, yeah, which you can read before the next session if you have time. So on that point at 10:27, so I'm just within time, which is good. The bell's about to go. Anybody got any questions, any comments? You can use the chat.
อาจารย์มีอย่างถามเพิ่มเติมบ่อะไรเป็นเติมบ่ไปหมดเวลาเลยเนาะ อาจารย์บริจำได้มีอย่างถามเพิ่นบ่
Sorry, Dr. Pam.
Sure.
I couldn't find the video from your paper, the TED Talk video.
Oh, right. Okay. I think it just clicks up with me.
Okay.
I've got it on the screen. Let me just. Where's it gone?
Maybe you can post on the
share your
comment.
screen and then you click it. You click on the link by sharing your screen, and you can see all together.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to work with me.
Maybe could you can add in the chat so we can link directly.
Yeah, Yeah, it won't let me because my say my oh here it is. Here it is. Can you see on your screen now?
We're going to show you a new kind of bag.
Yeah, we've got to do the video, the adverts, because I haven't paid. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
So I just clicked on that link, literally just clicked on that link. That's all I've done. Yeah.
I have one of the best jobs in the world because I get to work with people who are fun, funny, energetic,
แต่ท่านเห็นบอกคอยก็ไม่เห็น
insightful.
I don't suppose you want to watch it now, but
18 years of age.
it's just literally all I've done is just click on that link that's in the paper. So short of sending it again, I'm not quite sure what else I can do. I can send it again, but it's the same link. So does anybody know if there's any index that you can do for YouTube? I mean, that's the title, Teaching Methods for Inspiring Students of the Future by Joe Rule. So it might be worth just making a note of that and doing a search on YouTube for that, possibly. I'll write that down. But perhaps if you've had problems.
Maybe Dr. Santi can send us via WhatsApp. I think this link, it might be easier.
Okay, yeah. Or maybe Dr. Pam, you can send the links through email, but because I already send you the email address for all participants, so you can send email as well. The link.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure whether if I send it, it's going to make any difference, to be quite honest, because I've already sent the link.
Okay.
So the link is there. It's there in the paperwork. So I suggest just in a set, as you can see, actually, it's a bit longer than I said it was. It's 17 minutes, but it is quite a useful thing. So I only have the link. That's all I have, and I've already shared that. So. Okay, any other questions?
อาจารย์ชัชวีเด้มีอย่างถามเพิ่นบ่อาจารย์
Hello.
ยัน
Hello.
Sorry, I can't hear. Whoever's trying to ask a question, I can't hear. Did you want to?
Yeah, Dr. Pam.
Yeah, your sound is not brilliant, but yeah, carry on. You keep freezing, so I'm just wondering if it might be better if you put your question in the chat. I'm not sure whether it's the internet at your end, but I keep on getting messages at my end as well to say my internet connection is not brilliant. So I think we've done quite well today. Yeah. Yes. Yes, it is freezing. Not free. Well, it's freezing here. I bet you're really hot there, aren't you? It's freezing cold here in the UK. It's very cold, but I guess you are very hot. So.
In Laos, very hot now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
อาจารย์พงษ์ส่งเด้มีอย่างถาม
Hello, Dr.
Yes.
Pam.
Yes. Hello.
Yeah, for today, just only the introductory session. So actually, we don't have many questions, but as we know that for helping the student to get a good job, I think they need more skills, not just only technical skill, maybe English, and the most important is working experience.
Yes, absolutely.
So based on your experience, do you have some idea how to help our students to have experience when they graduate? So it will be easier for them to get a good job.
Yeah.
So we had the problem here for our students because they don't have any experience when they graduate the bachelor degree. So maybe you can focus more about the working experience for our students for maybe next session. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you. Very interesting program.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, that is one of the key things we will explore next time, which is that the main barrier for your students, for any students that are coming out of education, is that they don't have work experience. Yeah. And so they need to absolutely try and develop that aspect and try and make the most of any sort of experience that they have. Yeah. So that an employer sees them as more three-dimensional people. Yeah, because they have skills. Yeah, they you know, they are, you know, they're functioning adults and they've got to a high level of education. They have skills, but they don't have formal experience, maybe, or they have less formal experience than they will have done. So they absolutely need to think about that, and they need to make the most of what they have got, or try to develop that, you know, while they have the chance. Yeah, at university. Or if they don't get a job straight away, what are they going to be doing in terms of, you know, maybe voluntary work or temporary work or whatever. Yeah, and making the most of that. But they will all have had some experience. So you're absolutely right. It's the key barrier for students. And yes, we will talk about that with CVs next time. About enhancing and enriching CVs. Yeah, definitely. But thank you for the question. That's really helpful. Yeah. Okay. Any other queries? Any other questions? Any other comments? Okay. Dr. Santi, can you remember what the date is for the next session? I haven't got my calendar with me.
I think I already said the next section. The next day, right? Next day. I think this week, right? After New Year.
Yeah, I think you're on holiday next week, aren't you? So I can't honestly remember, but it's on the schedule. It's on the schedule.
Yeah. I already sent the.
Okay, fine. Okay, sorry. I was just going to try and remind everybody, but I forgot to bring my calendar with me. So, okay, thank you very much.
We follow the same schedule that it is planned.
Okay, brilliant. So you all know when the next session is. No, we can't say.
So before we closing our session, so I would like to let all participants to open the video and.
Okay, can I just say thank you very much to Dr. Maylan Chan, who sent the YouTube link, yeah, in the chat. So if anybody wants to pick the link up in that chat. Yeah, if you want to pick that link up in the chat, then hopefully that will work, because it's looking blue to me. So thank you very much for doing that. We should all have the right link now.
Yeah. อาจารย์สอนนักศึกษาอาจารย์กาลิซีอาจารย์ซีวอนอาจารย์เบยังอาจารย์เบอาจารย์ซีวอนอาจารย์สอนนักศึกษากับอาจารย์อีกเนาะบนออนไลน์เถอะโอเคเนาะโอเคอาจารย์ได้คลิปต้นอยู่เนาะ
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay, for today, I have no question for today. Maybe next time.
อาจารย์ซีวอนออนไลน์บ่เนาะอันเปิดกล้องอาจารย์เด้ออาจารย์สอนนักศึกษา
ตอนนั้นจะได้บอกเพราะว่าขี่รถอยู่
ไปได้ไปจะได้อาจารย์ได้ไปอย่างเดี๋ยวจะถ่าย6ไว้ไปอย่างหลักฐานโอเคเนาะเจ้ากำลังถ่าย1 2 3โอเคเจ้าได้ละขอบใจเดี๋ยวส่งหาแต่ละคนจะทานเด้อโอเคครับ
ดร.สันติก่อนถามได้บ่
ใช่ครับ
เจ้า
ดร.สันติอันน่ะ
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr.
โอ้ยจันเบกออนไลน์เนาะ
Are we ready to finish, Dr. Santi?
Yes, okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
ต่อ
and I
ไป
look
เป็น
forward
วัน
to
ที่
seeing you again.
28บ่รู้มื้อใด Thank you
Thanks very much.
ตารางเดี๋ยวขอเบิ่งในตารางบ่จื้อคักละในตาราง
โอ้
ที่
เบิ่ง
ส่ง
มื้อ
ให้
วันที่10เป็นมื้อวันที่10เป็นเว้าว่า Water Festival นี่บ่เข้าใจว่าเป็นโมดูลเนี่ยไหนนะตัวก็มีอยู่วันที่
อ๋อ
10เป็นวันพั
แล้ว
ก
เขียนใส่หนังสือหมายความว่ามื้อเขาพัก
เป็น Water Festival
มื้อเขาพัก
โอเค
เขียนใส่หนังสือ
เป็นพักแสดงว่าเขียนใส่ชื่อสับสนอยู่เนาะ
เจ้า
จังซั่นให้
เจ้า
เข้าสิมีแต่วันที่28แล้วซั่นเจ้า
เจ้า
April
นั่นแหละ
ขอบใจหลายๆ
นี่แหละเจ้าโอเคเนาะขอบใจอาจารย์ทุกท่านด้วยอา
ขอ
จา
บ
รย์
ใจ
ขอบใจเถือไปเห็นร่วม
เป็น
กั
อะ
น
ไร
เจ้าเจ้า
ขอบใจหลายเจ้า
เจ้า
Okay, thank you very much then.
Okay,
Bye
thank you,
bye.
Dr. Pam. Yeah, very good for today's
Great.
training. Yeah.
Thanks very much. See you next time.
See you next
Bye-bye.
time. Bye bye.
See you next time.
Yeah, see you next time. Bye. Bye bye.